Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Systeme podcast with me, Natasha Pinto. Today, our guest is Kristina Romero. She's an entrepreneur, web consultant, content creator, business coach, and the founder of Romero Media LLC. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you on here, and especially for this first question, because I think you're going to have a seriously unique take on this. So, my first question is always I like to kind of get a history of our guests and see where they started, what they thought they were going to do with their careers, and what put them on the path to where they are now.
So, my beginning is a little bit different than most. At 17 years old, I got a full-time job on the American soap opera As the World Turns. So at 17, I moved to New York City for the 3-year contract, was going to, be this professional actress for my entire career. That was where I was headed. And that's very early on. I often think that's kind of like my college years in many ways. But I decided to not renew my 3-year contract for that job and moved to Los Angeles to pursue different jobs in acting. Did another soap opera out there, a couple movies, and then really wanted to get behind the scenes in Hollywood. I got my master's in screenwriting from USC. But while I was getting my master's, I started creating websites on the side. So my dad had given me a book about Dreamweaver to build websites. He'd given me that and said, "Hey, make your own fan site." That was when I was introduced to it. So I was doing that for myself and my sister and her, whatever she was doing for her business. I got an HTML book and I just kind of learned on the side how to make these sites. And then I started making them for my professors at USC. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's way more demand for websites than there are for screenplays in the world. And so after spending, goodness, by that point, almost 10 years in that town, I was done. I had felt like I accomplished some pretty big things, gotten some awards and recognition, and I was like, all right, I think we're done with this chapter of my life. And I started my own business doing website development at that point. And I married my husband. I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be a little bit more in control of my time and my schedule and my workflow. So it was just the perfect transition. And I was so hungry in the sense of I'd been told for the last 10 years, I could only work when someone selected me. I auditioned and they could give me the job. So I was so hungry to be like, I can get clients myself. I don't have to wait for someone to tell me when I can work. And so I think that drive made it explode really fast. And I got a lot of clients and made a business pretty quickly because I was just so happy that no one was standing in my way anymore.
I think that's an interesting comparison and something that lots of other people experience to a lesser degree. We're busy working for the man on somebody else's time, and they dictate our 9 to 5 when we can take lunch and that kind of thing. And yours, even more so, you're waiting to even be told that you could work and get those hours that you could work. And I know acting it's a crazy amount of time that you spend.
Yes. I mean, it's great when you're working. There's a lot of camaraderie and there's a lot of fun in it, but that's not the career. The career is auditioning and networking and biding time. I mean, that is actually the career. So yeah, it's a unique type of work for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of my other questions that I like to ask our podcast guests is to kind of give us a bit of a comparison of how they were doing when they started in their online business, kind of a first month versus how they're doing now. Because I think a lot of people get started and they're like, okay, cool. I have this business idea. I'm going to go all in, and they put all their time and effort into it. And at the end of their first month or second month, they're like, oh, wow, $10. That's all I made. I don't know if this is worth it.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I don't mind giving real numbers too. I think it really helps people understand as well. It maybe makes them feel a little bit better about where they are. When I started doing this as a side hustle, freelancing, whatever you want to call it, I had one client paying me $1,000 a month to do like some websites for them every now and again, like website work, like just them, right? Like just their website, almost like a part-time. It was quite a bit of hours. I was also creating media for them. So I had that steady thing every single month. I knew I was being underpaid, but I was learning and I needed to learn. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was kind of learning on their time and their money. So that was fine with me. And then I would do a website for about $500 to $800. That was my range starting out. So I could probably make about, $1,500 a month starting out. That was it. I didn't have hardly any expenses at the time, that's for sure. And I was working probably the equivalent of like a 40-hour work week because I was learning and I had no idea what I was doing. A lot of like nighttime work with the computers in front of me, in front of the television, and I'm just crying because I can't understand why something's not working or broken. Those were the early days. And then flash forward from then, about 10 years later, 11 years later, I ended up selling my web agency of that 11 years during the pandemic. So let's flash forward to that period of time. And I had about 40 clients on recurring care plan subscriptions and was doing about 2 projects concurrently at one time. And those projects are ranging from anywhere from like $5,000 to $10,000. And my 40 website clients were paying anywhere from like $100 a month to $150 to $200 a month. So I was making, 6 figures at that point when I sold my web agency and working about 15 hours, 20 hours a week max. Because I had people working for me I had like a developer working for me, a virtual assistant working for me. So a lot different.
Yeah, it's something definitely to aspire to. And I think people forget that it's not just the money that you're after, you're also after that free time, that kind of from the 40 hours a week to 15 hours, it's a serious amount. That 25 hours more that you have to your day is life-changing.
That was always my goal over the money. I wanted to be able to, I have 4 children. So every passing couple of years, there was another child and another child. So I needed time to be a full-time mom, and I didn't want to be a full-time business owner, but I had to still run a full-time company. So my challenge throughout those 11 years was, how do I get there? What do I do? What changes do I need to make that happen?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the dream for lots of people, is that you get to choose your hours and you get to do something that you enjoy and then spend time with family. Now, my first big question for you is, because you've spent so much time working with websites, you've got a really great idea of the importance of online presence, especially in 2022. So I want to ask you, how intentional do you have to be when creating it? Because I still, even to this day, I kind of see some websites pop up, or like weird social media profiles that just exist and they don't have any effort or, I don't know, crafting behind them. So can you get away with that still, or is it actually just a mess?
So I take a different approach than most. I always took a different approach. I can't be like sleazy or salesy. I have to be genuine and authentic and have genuine relationships. So a lot of times I stayed away from different things that made it just like, this is what everybody's doing. And it felt very, salesy or inauthentic. So I kind of stick with the things that just reflected me. And so there was a point in time where, I'd be blogging and I'm like, I'm not really saying anything. So then I switched over to, having more conversations and webinars, and that seemed to be more me, to kind of put more webinars out there for different types of clients and have those types of workshops and stuff, like teaching. I was like, that's it. Okay. And now I found my niche. Like, I really like to instruct my clients. I really like to teach them things. And so I kind of found and navigated where that meant. Almost majority of all my new web clients came from referrals. So I just nurtured my current clients in my list rather than trying to really put out a lot of, I did profiles for making everything legit, right? She's a real company, she's a real person, and would engage in that way. But I never wanted to say anything if I didn't have anything to say. And so that's how I played it. I would put out content, especially in my web agency space, when I felt like there was something to say, really focused on my list and nurturing my list. the website then just kind of morphed from this is how everybody does their website to then this sounds more like me. And this, it just sounds more of like something my clients would like to read and understand and would reach out to me based on it sounding more authentic and genuine. So that's the approach I always took with an online presence. If I was I always say, if I'm talking to people about online presence, I'm always like, if you walked in a room and there was a whole bunch of people there who were potential clients, what would you do? What would you say? Who would you pull aside? How would you speak to people? Online, it's no different. If you enter into a Facebook group and you like jump right in, you're like, hey, I offer such and such services, hit me up. Like that's like running into a room and being like, hey, I offer such and such services, hit me up. And everyone's looking at you like, what? Like, it's just awkward, right?
Yeah.
So I always feel like that you to play it like it's a room and approach people, start talking to them, build a relationship, see how they're doing, what are their needs. And then it naturally segues into the fact that you do these things. That's how I like to look at it. I don't like to look at it as like a set of rules of things you need to do, but like if it was a real place with real people, how would you interact with that? Where would you go? What would you do? Would you take a lot of selfies? If that's you, then go for it. But that wasn't me, so I wasn't going to do that.
Definitely. I think it's so important to be genuine because it bleeds through into everything that you say, and people are more likely to trust you, more likely to connect with you as a human being and be willing to trust you with their money, with their business, if you can stand by what you say. So yeah, I think authenticity is extremely important. Now I'd like to take it and narrow it down a little bit more. So how do you take your online presence and then use it to build a brand? Because while you can be present out there online and exist, how do you make yourself recognizable so that people can see anything that you've created and say, oh, I know that's Kristina.
Yeah, right.
I want to watch it and I want to see it.
You have to really figure out who you serve best. So, it's a niche, kind of defining that. And it can be a person, place, or thing. It doesn't have to be, I serve fitness coaches. And I mean, it could be, I serve fitness coaches that want membership websites with courses and who want to actually grow to be influencers, then you got to kind of broaden it a little bit from there. But kind of understanding who you serve is really, really helpful. Then you're able to morph your brand. And I think it evolves. So the trick is most people starting out, they're like, I must have my niche. And I mean, you kind of don't know early on what you like to do and who you like to serve. So it's not a bad idea to start offering like a whole bunch of things and work with all different kinds of people. It's definitely more stressful that way, but you then begin to know like what you do well and where you're skilled at, where you want to focus and things like that. So you begin to niche in certain areas and then your conversations become more specific. And then that's kind of where the brand comes from. It kind of comes out of those situations. For the longest time, after like as building my business, I started teaching other web professionals how to build their business. And one of the things I just couldn't stop talking about was website care plans. I just thought it revolutionized everything for me. And I just talked about website care plans every single place I was and just wherever I went, whoever I talked to. And I just became known as that person. And then I developed this brand that I kind of run now since selling my agency, which is WP Care Market, which is all about website care plans and client relationships. And that kind of came out of, again, that thing you end up really loving to talk about and are passionate about. And sometimes it takes time and you can pivot along the way. You may have that thing that you do and then you change your mind and do something else. So I think that's what you do. You have to niche in order to define what your brand is.
But then still be flexible about it. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't be rigid and everything online is still developing and changing. And if you're stuck on one thing and suddenly everyone knows how to do that, you need to be able to take them on that next step.
Because there's always something underneath it. So I would say when someone niches very specifically like fitness coaches who do courses online and want to become influencers, like at the heart of that, you're really teaching someone about like building an online education business. So, that can broaden a little bit and you may pivot away from fitness coaches to schools that need to go online because the pandemic made them realize they have a population that could really benefit from online education. And so it's like this tiny little pivot, whoop, but it's still in that same foundation of actually that shared skill level, that shared space of that niche. So that's how I see us pivoting with brands.
Yeah, definitely. And you can kind of reapply your skill set to something slightly different because you've had to learn everything already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Now, my next question is about automation. So it's a fantastic thing, a huge time saver, and often lots of people employ it in personalization. But if it's done wrong, it comes across as the exact opposite and can be very impersonal. So, how do you maintain that personal touch? Is it enough to just put someone's name in a subject line, or what more can you do?
I always say that automation should be moving the human process forward. So it should be implemented when there could be bottlenecks or ways of forgetting things. It's just there to move the human interaction process forward. So it never is there to replace the human. I think when you start to think about it that way, you have a better skill at editing where it should be and where it shouldn't be. So, there's a lot of ways we can save time, even with email automation, but you should have a process in which does that interaction compromise anything along the process of retention or conversion, and figuring out where that is. So for example, like someone books, a call with you, the automation is going to go out to put it on my calendar. So that's moving the human process forward. And then we're still going to connect on a call as people, as humans, to move it into a process where I book a call and off of it is not really a call, but you gathering all the information through an automated system without a personal touch, it's going to remove a lot of maybe your end goal of what you're trying to accomplish there. So especially when it comes to our clients and taking care of their sites or projects, can't remember that our superhuman strength is that we're a real person. Especially as AI gets smarter and building websites and robots and all these wonderful things. At the end of the day, a lot of people just want to pay for that ability to get someone on the phone, a real human person that they can talk to. So you have to strike a good balance of implementing automation in your business, but not taking away too much of the human process that's required to make it worth working with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's excellent advice. Now, is there a way for a small business to start implementing automation? Are there some places where you suggest it's like a really good idea, little thing that'll save them time, but they can still keep that personal touch? Because I think something that small businesses used to be really great at and kick everyone else's butt at was personalization, because they were so small. They had such a small audience. They were able to keep that like one-on-one conversation going. But now they need to catch up with those big businesses who are personalizing and using automation and just growing astronomical rates.
Yeah. I think you start with your processes. So you really work through your process. When you feel like your process works well, through you doing it, then you look at it and you can determine which pieces slow you down a little bit, and then throw in automation there to just help move those roadblocks along. So when delegating, if you have people working for you, when delegating to them, this is kind of where I would always put in automation, to where someone's action was dependent upon something else happening. I would look and say, can automation help there and help that roadblock so that we don't come to a dead end and then the process just stops. So those would be the things I would look for. Are there any like potential dead ends or ways in which someone can't move forward because of someone else's action? Can we do something there? Automatically creating tasks is a good one off of things. Alerting you through an email or a text message for certain things, adding, so like lots of little things like that. That's where I think you really benefit starting out from leveraging automation. But you have to know your processes, and that's really the hard thing when starting out, because you don't know your processes. So you think automation is going to solve that for you, but it's not. You have to figure out your process.
think you have to do it manually before you can do it automatically. It's almost like driving a
Yes.
car. If you understand the mechanics
Yeah.
of then you
Yeah.
do the automatic version.
That's true. Yes.
All right. And then let's talk a little bit about testing and analytics as well. So it's super useful, but really, really useful if you've got a bigger audience. But again, if you're starting out small, how big does your audience have to do for like a fair report to come out of testing and analytics? Because if you've got 10 people and you're running an A/B test on an email,
Mm-hmm.
is it worth it? Are you going to get any interesting data? What kind of things should you pay attention to starting out, especially?
I think there's different ways depending upon the audience. So, for example, if I had 10 people, I probably wouldn't be looking at Google Analytics for that. I would be looking at a hot map of watching them go through a website,
Yeah.
because I could do that with 10 people. I couldn't do that with 1,000 or 10,000 people, right? So it's probably a different thing. When it comes to, like, for example, I have a course and I tag the courses I tag them based on their completion, or I'll tag them based on their buyer journey or anything like that. And so I'm actually able to get pretty good data from the actual interactions. So I guess it really depends on what you're looking for and what kind of data that you need. But there's certainly more effective ways of looking at a smaller audience than trying to analytics with just a handful. I always say too, if you have like 5 people, then just get them on the phone and like ask them, ask them the questions. You're going to get pretty good feedback that way. And then if you have 10,000 people, you're not going to be able to get them on the phone. So that's where you really rely on some of the big tools to tell you the things about visitor rate, completions, and things like that. So sometimes the small size is actually pretty good because then you can get the real experiences. For A/B testing, I mean, I just constantly played around with things. Does it work better? Does it not? I think the whole like allure of being like, this is going to be your easy solution to find out what works and doesn't work. Unfortunately, there's still just the reality of like, well, let's put it out there at this price, and it didn't sell. We'll go back, workshop it. There's so many factors involved that you can't really split into an A/B test sometimes. So, like the product itself, maybe the product itself has a problem. It's not the wording on the page, So yeah, so I haven't, well, I just throw things out there. I'm really good at pushing the button. I'm really good at just put it out there. I think too often when it comes to analytics, we overanalyze to where we just are paralyzed and we don't move forward. So my thing was always, I didn't worry about it. And I just put it out there, just kept putting it out there, change things, edit things, make it better, get feedback, put it out there again, and just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I think the best kind of test is actually to just try. Because if you work and overwork and keep working on something, eventually you're going to have nothing because you've, like you said, given yourself a panic attack over the nitty-gritty details.
You'll never do it. Yeah. That's the difference too. If anyone's like, I just can't get, I want to be like, the only difference is I see people successful because they're just doing it, because they're actually just doing it. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, my last big question for you is about traffic. So for you specifically, getting people to your website, what are your favorite traffic sources? Do you lean more towards paid traffic sources, or are you after a more long game content marketing strategy?
Again, it really depends on what you sell, who do you sell to. One of my side businesses is a book, pretty specific, pretty keyword specific. I'm getting pretty great traffic results from Amazon ads with those keywords. I'm going to probably start Facebook ads with that. And, they're definitely, I'm getting good traffic off of that. That's different than like a website design business, which there's a lot of people out there doing website design. So what I've seen is typically if you're niched down into something specific, maybe even like a particular type of software that you're an expert in or been certified in, you can tend to leverage YouTube videos or certain Facebook groups for that particular software, to get a lot of traffic off of that. A lot of times the certification will also put you on like a public directory for traffic. I have a directory for website professionals who offer website care, and they've gone through the training. So they're certified in my style of how I think you should offer website care. And then they get in the directory, and then, traffic will find them based on looking for, qualified website professional for website care. Now, it's not like a major traffic source for people, but it's a good example of how people can niche down specifically, find a directory for that and attract people. But the biggest success, in my opinion, when it comes to web for that reason, kind of like what I did with the book, of just really finding that keyword that makes you different rather than WordPress website designer, because that's a pretty big one. There's a lot of people doing that. But if you specialize in active campaign and membership course websites with active campaign, you might be able to really put a lot of content out there that's going to attract a course creator who's really struggling with finding if their students are completing their courses, and come to you off of that. So it's tricky to figure out that niche, but I think if you're really reliant on traffic in this day and age and the way the internet is set up, you kind of have to niche down and be that specific.
Especially since Google has a tendency to change their algorithms, and along with all the other social media platforms, and then you've got to rework your authority back up if you had any, or have to deal with ads changing completely, moving you around. So yeah, it's definitely a good one. And then my last big question for you is, what does the future look like for you? So do you have a medium term or a long-term goal that you're looking towards? Where are you headed?
I can't say it because it's kind of under wraps right now, but there are some really exciting things happening in terms of, I love teaching this stuff for website professionals, how to run a business and run a successful business, especially in terms of being more genuine and like website like client relationships. But there's some opportunities coming up in that space for me as a instructor, a coach, things like that. So I can't quite say with who and when, but some exciting developments there. Meanwhile, I just love creating these passion projects that I do on the side. And I guess with that many years in website design and marketing, it's kind of easy, right, to create like a product and sell it on the side. So I'm continuing to do that with my writing. So I'm kind of getting back to that original degree where I got it as a writer, and I've been writing, which has been really fun. So I've got the coaching and I have the writing. And then I do host a retreat every year for recurring revenue. So I still have that conversation going with a lot of web agency owners on recurring revenue, called the Recurring Revenue Retreat. So that's kind of all ticking along. I'm very happy where I am. Again, my hours are split between motherhood and running businesses, multiple different things, but very happy. Yeah. So that's the foreseeable future for now. And
all right, now 2 shorter questions for you. My first one is, looking back, is there a piece of advice that you would give to perhaps your 17 or 18-year-old self?
Yes. Gosh, I don't know what I would give my 17-year-old self, but certainly starting out with my 25-year-old self with my business. When I started my business, I would say very early on, I would have encouraged myself to delegate, I waited way too long to bring on a virtual assistant, a developer, waited way too long for that. I would tell myself early on, get some help and start getting your processes and start bringing people on to help you. Don't try to do it all yourself. So I would have done that really early on.
It's definitely good advice for anybody. And then finally, where can our listeners find you? If you give me your websites and any social media tags, I will pop them in the description.
Wonderful. If you are a web agency owner and you wanted to learn more about website care plans and client relationships, that's wpcaremarket.com. There's a whole bunch of training on creating processes, care plans, automation, sales, cool stuff like that. Romero Media LLC.org is my main company. Underneath that are all my other projects that I do. Multi-passionate, can't stop, a little bit of a workaholic, all under there, or KristinaRomero.com. That redirects as well. And that's mostly it. You'll find me somewhere there. I am in Facebook. We do have a Facebook group for web agency owners, and you'll find that info at wpcaremarket.com when you go to join our network.
Okay, fantastic. Kristina, thank you so much for joining me and for giving me your time. And thank you to our listeners today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on a podcasting app, subscribe to the Systeme podcast so that you never miss an episode. Systeme.io is a digital marketing software platform packed with all the tools you need to grow your online business.